The morning of October 15th started like any other Tuesday at Adelaide Cottage in Windsor. Princess Kate was in the garden with Princess Charlotte, watching her daughter chase butterflies among the autumn flowers. The 7-year-old girl laughed as she tried to catch the orange wings dancing in the crisp morning air. Kate smiled, holding her teacup. Enjoying these peaceful moments away from the constant attention of palace life. Inside the cottage, the security team was changing shifts. Officer James Harrison had just arrived for his morning duty. He was a veteran guard with 15 years of experience protecting the royal family. James always took his job seriously, checking every corner and monitoring every camera feed. His colleagues often joked that he could spot trouble from a mile away. Charlotte ran back to her mother, her cheeks pinked from the cool air. She wanted to show Kate a drawing she had made the night before. It was a picture of their family at the beach during their last holiday. Kate hugged her daughter and told her how beautiful it was. These simple moments meant everything to her. Being a mother was more important than any royal duty. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Windsor estate, a man named David Fletcher was walking along the public footpath that ran near the royal properties. He was dressed in dark clothing and carried a large backpack. David had been planning this day for months. He had studied the security patterns, learned the guard schedules, and mapped every entrance to the royal grounds. In his mind, he believed he had a message that the royal family needed to hear. He thought he was on a mission to save the country. David had lost his job 2 years ago and blamed the government for all his problems. His anger grew with each passing month until it became an obsession. He spent hours online reading conspiracy theories and convincing himself that the royal family was behind everything wrong in Britain. His family had tried to help him, but he pushed them all away. Now he lived alone in a small apartment, surrounded by newspapers and handwritten notes covering every wall. Back at Adelaide Cottage, Charlotte asked her mother if they could have a picnic lunch in the garden. Kate agreed, thinking it would be lovely to eat outside on such a beautiful day. She called inside to ask the kitchen staff to prepare sandwiches and fruit. Charlotte clapped her hands with excitement and ran to get her favorite blanket for sitting on the grass. James. Harrison walked the perimeter of the property for his routine check. Everything seemed normal. The birds sang in the trees, and the gardeners worked on trimming the hedges near the main gate. He nodded to them as he passed. Security felt tight, but James never let his guard down. He had learned over the years that danger could come at any moment, even on the quietest days. David Fletcher reached the edge of the estate. His heart pounded in his chest. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind. He knew exactly where the cameras were positioned and which areas had blind spots. He waited behind a large oak tree, watching the guards move about their duties. He checked his watch. In 10 minutes, there would be a gap in their patrol pattern. That was his window. Kate and Charlotte spread the blanket under their favorite apple tree. The kitchen staff brought out a basket filled with sandwiches, strawberries, and lemonade. Charlotte immediately grabbed a strawberry and bit into it, juice running down her chin. Kate laughed and wiped her daughter's face with a napkin. The princess felt grateful for these normal family moments that many people took for granted. Inside his security office, James noticed something odd on one of the camera feeds. A figure seemed to be lingering near the eastern boundary fence. It was probably nothing, just a tourist who got too close, but something about the man's behavior bothered him. The way he kept looking around, checking something in his hands. James zoomed in the camera but couldn't get a clear view through the trees. He radioed to his partner, Officer Sarah Mitchell, who was stationed near the main entrance. He asked her to check the eastern perimeter. Sarah acknowledged and started walking in that direction. She had worked with James for 3 years and trusted his instincts completely. If he thought something was wrong, it probably was. David saw the female guard approaching from the distance. His heart raced faster. This was not part of his plan. He was supposed to have more time. He made a quick decision and moved to a different location, crawling through the bushes to stay hidden. His backpack caught on branches, making noise, but he pushed forward. He could not turn back now. He had come too far. Charlotte finished her sandwich and asked her mother if they could play a game. Kate suggested they could look for 4-leaf clovers in the grass. The little princess loved this game and immediately started searching on her hands and knees. Kate watched her daughter with pure love in her eyes. These were the moments she wanted to protect forever. Sarah reached the eastern fence and looked around carefully. She saw the disturbed bushes and broken branches. Someone had definitely been here recently. She radioed James immediately, reporting signs of a potential intruder. James felt his stomach tighten. This was serious. He activated the emergency protocol and called for additional security units. Within minutes, 6 more guards arrived at Adelaide Cottage. James briefed them quickly about the suspicious activity near the eastern fence. He divided them into teams to search the grounds systematically. One team would move toward the area where Sarah found the disturbance. Another would secure the cottage where Princess Kate and Princess Charlotte were having their picnic. James took personal responsibility for protecting the royal family members. David heard voices and knew. The guards were searching for him. He had to move fast. He ran through the wooded area, his backpack bouncing against his back. Inside the bag was something he believed would make the royal family listen to him. He thought it would force them to address his concerns about the country. In reality, what he carried would terrify everyone who saw it. Kate noticed the sudden increase in security personnel around the cottage. 3 guards approached her position quickly but professionally. One of them, a woman named Emma, spoke to Kate in a calm voice. She explained there was a security concern, and they needed to move the princess and her daughter inside immediately. Kate felt her maternal instincts kick in. She scooped Charlotte into her arms without question. Charlotte could sense something was wrong. She asked her mother what was happening. Kate held her daughter close and told her they were just playing a special game with the security team. They needed to go inside for a little while. Charlotte trusted her mother completely and nodded. Wrapping her small arms around Kate's neck, James ran across the lawn, his radio crackling with updates from his team. They had spotted the intruder moving through the trees toward the cottage. The man was carrying a large backpack and appeared to be heading directly toward the area where the princess and her daughter had been moments ago. James's training took over. He moved faster, his hand on his weapon. Ready for anything, David broke through the tree line and suddenly found himself in the open lawn area. He saw the cottage ahead. His breathing was heavy, and sweat poured down his face. He unzipped his backpack as he ran, reaching inside for what he had brought. This was his moment. This was when everything would change. Kate was halfway to the cottage entrance when she heard someone shouting. She turned and saw a man running across the lawn toward them. Her heart stopped. She held Charlotte tighter and started moving faster. The security guards immediately positioned themselves between the running man and the royal family members. James saw the intruder reaching into his backpack. His training and experience told him this was a critical moment. Whatever was in that bag could be dangerous. He could not take any chances with the safety of Princess Kate and Princess Charlotte. He sprinted with everything he had. Closing the distance between himself and the intruder, David pulled something from his backpack. It was wrapped in cloth. He raised it above his head, still running, still shouting words that nobody could understand. His face was red, and his eyes were wild. He truly believed he was doing something important, something that would save the nation. James launched himself at the intruder with full force. The tackle was perfect, hitting David in the midsection and bringing him crashing to the ground. The wrapped object flew from David's hands and landed several feet away on the grass. Other guards rushed in immediately, helping James restrain the struggling man. David fought against them, screaming about conspiracies and corruption. But 5 trained security officers quickly subdued him. Kate had reached the cottage entrance with Charlotte. Emma, the female guard, guided them inside and locked the door. Kate set Charlotte down and knelt to look at her daughter's face. She asked if Charlotte was okay. The little girl nodded but looked confused and a bit scared. Kate hugged her again, whispering that everything was fine, and the guards were just doing their job to keep everyone safe. Outside on the lawn, James stood up slowly, catching his breath. His knee hurt from the tackle, but he ignored the pain. His attention was focused on the wrapped object lying in the grass. He approached it carefully, not knowing what to expect. One of the other guards called for the bomb disposal unit just to be safe. Nobody was taking chances today. David was handcuffed, and held face down on the ground. He was still shouting, but his words were becoming less coherent. The guards waited for the police to arrive and take him into custody. James looked down at the man and felt a mixture of anger and pity. What could drive someone to do something so dangerous near innocent children? The bomb disposal team arrived within 15 minutes. They were experts trained to handle any kind of explosive or dangerous device. They used their equipment to scan the wrapped object from a distance. Everyone held their breath, waiting for their assessment. James watched from a safe position, his heart still pounding from the adrenaline. After several tense minutes, the bomb disposal leader carefully unwrapped the object. What they found inside made everyone freeze in disbelief. It was not what anyone expected. The lead officer looked at James with a shocked expression and shook his head slowly. James felt confused. What could possibly be in that package to cause such a reaction? Inside the cottage, Kate held Charlotte on her lap, reading her a story to help calm her down. She could hear activity outside, but tried to focus on her daughter. The security team had assured her the situation was under control, but she would not feel completely safe until she knew exactly what had happened. Her phone buzzed with a message from Prince William, who had been immediately notified of the incident. He was on his way home from his engagement in London. The police arrived and took David Fletcher into custody. He had finally stopped shouting and now sat silently in the back of the police car, staring at nothing. His moment of action was over, and reality was beginning to crash down on him. He would face serious charges for trespassing on royal property and threatening members of the royal family. James received a full briefing from the bomb disposal team about what they had found in the package. His face went pale as they explained exactly what the intruder had been carrying. It was disturbing, shocking, and completely unexpected. He knew he needed to inform Princess Kate immediately, but he wanted to choose his words carefully. This information would be difficult to process. The senior palace security director, Akala Stevens, arrived at Adelaide Cottage 30 minutes after the incident. He was a tall man with silver hair and a reputation for handling crises with calm efficiency. Michael had protected the royal family for over 20 years and had seen many security threats. But something about the grave. Expressions on the guards' faces told him this. Situation was different. James. Harrison met Michael near the entrance and briefed him privately about what the bomb disposal team had discovered. As James explained, Michael's expression changed from professional concern to genuine shock. He asked James to repeat certain details, needing to be absolutely certain he had heard correctly. This was not a standard security breach. This was something that would require careful handling and potentially mental health. Intervention, inside the wrapped cloth that David Fletcher had been carrying, was a collection of deeply disturbing items. There was no bomb or weapon in the traditional sense, but what was there revealed the dangerous state of the intruder's mind. The package contained dozens of photographs, all of them showing Princess Charlotte. The pictures had been collected from newspapers, magazines, and printed from online sources. Each photograph had been defaced with red marker, with strange symbols and words written across the child's face. Alongside the photographs was a handwritten manifesto, over 50 pages long, filled with paranoid ramblings about the royal family. David Fletcher had written detailed plans about how he intended to rescue Princess Charlotte from what he believed was a corrupt system. His delusions had convinced him that the young princess was sending him secret messages through her public appearances, begging him to save her. The writing showed clear signs of severe mental illness and obsessive behavior. There was also a collection of newspaper clippings about Princess Charlotte's school activities, charity events she attended with her parents, and even innocent family outings. David had been following the young princess's every public move for at least 2 years. He had created a timeline of her life, marking important dates and events. The level of obsession was terrifying to anyone who looked at the materials. Most disturbing of all were several drawings David had created himself. They showed a fantasy world where he imagined himself as Charlotte's protector, fighting against imaginary enemies. The drawings were crude, but detailed, revealing how deeply his delusions had consumed his thoughts. He had spent countless hours creating this alternate reality in his mind where he was a hero in a story that existed only in his disturbed imagination. Michael Stevens looked through the materials with growing concern. This was not just a security failure that allowed someone to get close to royal property. This was evidence of a stalker who had become dangerously fixated on a 7-year-old child. The fact that he had managed to get so close to Princess Charlotte while carrying these items made Michael's blood run cold. If James Harrison had not spotted him on the cameras and acted so quickly, the situation could have ended very differently. The police detective assigned to the case, Inspector Rachel Morrison, arrived to take custody of all the evidence. She had specialized training in cases involving stalkers and obsessive behavior. As she examined the materials, she explained to Michael and James that David Fletcher would likely be charged with multiple offenses, including trespassing, stalking, and making threats against a minor. Given the severity of his fixation and the detailed nature of his planning, he would also undergo mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Michael knew he had to inform Princess Kate about what the intruder had been carrying. This was not information that could be kept from her. As Charlotte's mother, she had the right to know about the threat that had come so close to her daughter. However, he wanted to present the information carefully, without causing unnecessary panic. Kate was strong and resilient, but learning that someone had been obsessively stalking her young daughter would be devastating for any parent. Prince William arrived at Adelaide Cottage just after noon. His face was tense with worry as he rushed through the entrance. He found Kate in the sitting room with Charlotte, who was now playing with her toys, seemingly unaffected by the morning's events. William embraced his wife tightly, then knelt down to hug his daughter. He tried to keep his expression calm for Charlotte's sake, but Kate could see the fear in his eyes. After ensuring Charlotte was settled with one of her nannies in another room, William and Kate met with Michael Stevens in the private study. Emma, the security guard who had helped protect them during the incident, stood outside the door to ensure their privacy. Michael took a deep breath before beginning to explain what had been discovered in the intruder's backpack. Kate listened in silence as Michael described the photographs, the manifesto, and the disturbing drawings. Her face grew paler with each detail. When Michael finished, she sat very still for a long moment, processing the information. Then she asked the question that every mother would ask in that situation. How long had this man been watching Charlotte? How much of their daughter's life had he been following? Inspector Morrison joined the meeting to provide more context. She explained that, based on the dates in David Fletcher's materials, he had been collecting information about Princess Charlotte for approximately 2 years. However, his obsession appeared to have intensified significantly in recent months. The frequency of his notes and the increasingly erratic nature of his writings suggested his mental state had been deteriorating rapidly. William asked about security failures. How had this man been able to gather so much information about their daughter? How had he been able to get so close to Adelaide Cottage? These were fair questions that demanded answers. Michael Stevens took responsibility, acknowledging that while most of the photographs came from publicly available sources, the security team should have identified the threat earlier through their monitoring systems. Inspector Morrison clarified that, unfortunately, until David Fletcher actually committed a crime by trespassing on royal property, the police would have had limited ability to intervene. Britain's laws protected free speech and allowed people to collect publicly available information, even if their interests seemed excessive. It was only when someone crossed the line into stalking, making threats, or trespassing that legal action could be taken. This was a frustrating reality of modern security work. Kate asked what would happen to David Fletcher now. The inspector explained that he would be held in custody and undergo psychiatric evaluation. Given the evidence of his mental illness and the nature of his obsession, he would likely be committed to a secure psychiatric facility rather than a regular prison. The courts took threats against children, especially royal children, very seriously. He would not be released until medical professionals deemed him no longer a danger to himself or others. William wanted to know if there were others like David Fletcher out there. Were there more people obsessing over their children? Michael admitted that the security team monitored numerous individuals who showed excessive interest in the royal family. Most were harmless enthusiasts who collected memorabilia and followed royal news closely. However, there were always a few whose behavior crossed into concerning territory. The security team worked with police and mental health services to track these individuals and intervene when necessary. Kate felt a wave of emotions wash over her. fear for her daughter's safety, anger that someone could become so fixated on an innocent child, guilt that perhaps she had not been vigilant enough about protecting Charlotte's privacy. William reached for her hand, understanding exactly what she was feeling. They had always tried to give their children as normal a life as possible. But incidents like this reminded them that normal was not really possible for their family. The couple discussed with Michael what security changes would be implemented. Additional guards would be assigned to Adelaide Cottage. Camera coverage would be expanded to eliminate any remaining blind spots. The security team would increase their monitoring of online forums and social media for any signs of concerning behavior toward the royal children. Background checks on anyone who worked near royal properties would be more thorough. Michael also recommended that Princess Charlotte receive age-appropriate guidance about personal safety without frightening her. Kate agreed, but insisted that Charlotte should not be made to feel afraid of the world. Finding that balance between keeping her daughter safe and allowing her to have a happy childhood would be challenging. But it was essential. Inspector Morrison mentioned that David Fletcher's family had been contacted. His sister had apparently tried to get him help for his mental health issues several times over the past year, but he had refused treatment. She was devastated to learn what he had done and cooperated fully with the investigation. The inspector believed the family would provide important information about the development of David's obsession and his deteriorating mental state. After the meeting concluded, William and Kate sat together in silence for a while. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them. Kate finally spoke, saying she wanted to go check on Charlotte. William nodded, and they went together to find their daughter. Charlotte was happily playing with her building blocks, creating an elaborate castle. She looked up and smiled when her parents entered, asking them to admire her creation. Kate knelt beside Charlotte and hugged her tightly, perhaps a bit longer than usual. Charlotte giggled and asked why her mother was being so cuddly today. Kate simply said she loved her very much and was proud of what a wonderful girl she was. William joined the embrace, and for a moment, they were just a normal family showing affection for each other. That evening, after Charlotte had been put to bed, Kate and William sat in their bedroom discussing how this incident would affect their lives. They knew the media would eventually learn about the security breach, though the palace would carefully control what information was released. The disturbing details about the intruder's obsession with Charlotte would need to be kept private to protect their daughter. Kate expressed concern about Charlotte's upcoming public appearances. There was a scheduled visit to a children's hospital in 2 weeks, where Charlotte was supposed to accompany her mother. Should they cancel it? William understood her worry, but suggested they consult with the security team first. They could not let fear control their lives or change how they raised their children. Later that night, Kate checked on Charlotte 3 times, something she had not done since Charlotte was a toddler. Each time she stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, unaware of the danger that had come so close. Kate felt grateful for James Harrison's quick thinking and action. That brave guard had prevented what could have been a traumatic encounter. The next morning, James Harrison was called to a private meeting with Prince William. The prince personally thanked him for his dedication and quick response during the incident. William said that James's vigilance and decisive action had protected what mattered most to him and Kate. He made sure James understood how deeply grateful the royal family was for his service. James felt honored, but also somewhat overwhelmed by the prince's gratitude. He explained that he had simply been doing his job, what any good security officer would have done. William disagreed, noting that James had spotted the suspicious behavior on the cameras when others might have dismissed it. His experience and instincts had made all the difference in preventing a potentially traumatic situation. The palace released a brief statement acknowledging that there had been a security incident at a royal residence, that an intruder had been apprehended, and that all family members were safe. The statement thanked the security team and police for their professional response. It deliberately omitted specific details about which royal residence was involved or what the intruder had been carrying. Protecting the family's privacy. Despite the palace's attempt at discretion, media speculation began almost immediately. Reporters stationed near Windsor noticed the increased security presence around Adelaide Cottage. Some publications ran stories speculating about what had happened, though none had accurate information about the disturbing nature of David Fletcher's obsession with Princess Charlotte. Kate struggled with anxiety in the days following the incident. She found herself constantly watching for threats, even in secure locations. She knew this hypervigilance was not healthy, but she could not help herself. The image of that man running across the lawn toward them kept replaying in her mind. What if James had not been there? What if the security cameras had not spotted David Fletcher when they did? Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who often consulted with the royal family, visited Adelaide Cottage 3 days after the incident. Kate had requested her expertise to ensure Charlotte was processing the events in a healthy way. Dr. Chen spent an hour playing and talking with Charlotte, using age-appropriate methods to assess how the young princess was coping with what she had witnessed, to everyone's relief. Dr. Chen reported that Charlotte seemed remarkably resilient. The 7-year-old understood that a man had tried to come too close and that the guards had stopped him. She did not seem traumatized by the experience. Kate had done an excellent job of staying calm during the incident and framing it as the guards doing their job, which helped Charlotte feel secure rather than frightened. However, Dr. Chen did recommend some preventive measures. She suggested that Kate and William maintain their normal routines as much as possible, which would help Charlotte feel that life was continuing safely. Any dramatic changes to their daily patterns might signal to Charlotte that something was still wrong, potentially creating anxiety where none currently existed. The key was to return to normalcy while implementing enhanced security measures invisibly in the background. The psychologist also met privately with Kate to discuss the mother's own emotional response to the incident. Kate admitted she was having difficulty sleeping and felt anxious whenever Charlotte was out of her sight. Dr. Chen normalized these feelings, explaining that any parent would react this way after learning their child had been stalked and threatened. She provided Kate with some coping strategies and suggested a few follow-up sessions if the anxiety persisted. William threw himself into working with the security team to prevent similar incidents in the future. He attended daily briefings and asked detailed questions about every aspect of royal protection. Michael Stevens appreciated the prince's engagement, but also gently reminded him that security was a complex balance. They needed to protect the family without making them prisoners in their own homes or denying the children a reasonably normal childhood. The security review revealed several areas for improvement. The camera system around Adelaide Cottage was upgraded with higher resolution equipment and better coverage. The guards' rotation schedules were adjusted to eliminate any gaps in patrols. Most importantly, the team implemented new software that could identify patterns of suspicious behavior in people who appeared frequently near royal properties. Even if they had not yet committed any crime, Inspector Morrison's investigation into David Fletcher uncovered disturbing details about how his obsession had developed. He had initially been a casual royal watcher, someone who enjoyed following news about the family, but seemed harmless. However, after losing his job and experiencing a series of personal failures, he had begun projecting his problems onto elaborate conspiracy theories. The royal family became scapegoats for everything wrong in his life. The inspector found that David had visited Windsor several times over the past 6 months, always staying just within the legal boundaries of public areas. He had photographed the cottages from a distance, timed the guard changes, and studied the routines of staff members who worked on the estate. His planning had been methodical and patient. If not for James Harrison's vigilance on that particular morning, David might have found another opportunity to get even closer. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed that David suffered from a severe delusional disorder combined with symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. The examining doctors believed his condition had been worsening for at least 2 years but had accelerated dramatically in recent months. He genuinely believed that Princess Charlotte was communicating with him through coded messages and photographs, and that he had been chosen to protect her from an imaginary conspiracy. Inspector Morrison shared this information with William and Kate during a follow-up meeting. Understanding that David was severely mentally ill helped Kate process her anger toward him. She still felt furious about what he had done and the fear he had caused. But she could also recognize that he was a sick man who needed treatment rather than simply a malicious criminal. William struggled more with this perspective, his protective instincts making it harder to feel sympathy for someone who had threatened his daughter. The inspector explained that David would be committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital for an indefinite period. He would receive treatment for his mental illness and would only be considered for release. When doctors could certify, he no longer posed a threat. Given the severity of his delusions and the specificity of his fixation on Princess Charlotte, that release would likely be many years away, if it happened at all. Kate asked whether David Fletcher's family bore any responsibility for not intervening sooner. Inspector Morrison explained that the family had actually tried to help. His sister had called mental health services multiple times when David's behavior became concerning. However, unless someone is actively threatening harm to themselves or others, forcing treatment on an adult is extremely difficult under British law. David had repeatedly refused help, and without evidence of imminent danger, authorities had limited power to intervene. This reality frustrated Kate deeply. It seemed wrong that families could watch their loved ones deteriorate mentally, but had no power to get them help until after they had done something dangerous. Inspector Morrison agreed it was one of the most challenging aspects of mental health law. Balancing individual rights with public safety, she mentioned that David's case might lead to discussions about improving the system for identifying and treating people before they've reached the point of committing crimes. Meanwhile, James Harrison found himself receiving attention he never wanted. Other security personnel at the palace treated him like a hero, constantly praising his quick action. The media, though they did not know his name, referred to the unnamed guard who had tackled the intruder as a brave protector of the royal family. James felt uncomfortable with all the attention. In his mind, he had simply done what he was trained and paid to do. Sarah Mitchell, James's colleague who had responded to his initial call about suspicious activity, nominated him for a commendation. The honor would recognize his exceptional performance in identifying and responding to the threat. James tried to decline, saying the entire team had worked together, but Michael Stevens insisted he accept the recognition. The commendation ceremony would be private, respecting James's preference for staying out of the spotlight. Kate asked to meet privately with James Harrison. She wanted to thank him personally for protecting Charlotte. The meeting was arranged in a small sitting room at Adelaide Cottage. When James arrived, he felt nervous. He had protected the royal family for years, but had rarely interacted directly with them in such an intimate setting. He stood at attention when Kate entered, unsure of the proper protocol for this unusual situation. Kate immediately put him at ease with her warm smile. She thanked him for being so vigilant and for acting so quickly when he sensed something was wrong. She told him that as a mother, she could never adequately express her gratitude for keeping Charlotte safe. James felt emotional hearing the princess speak so personally about her daughter. He assured Kate that protecting the royal family, especially the children, was not just his job, but his personal commitment. They talked for nearly 30 minutes. Kate asked James about his career, his family, and what motivated him to work in royal protection. James explained that he had always believed in service and duty. Protecting people who dedicated their lives to serving the country felt like important work. He had children of his own and understood deeply how precious they were. That personal connection made him especially committed to keeping the royal children safe. Kate told James about the anxiety she had been experiencing since the incident. She admitted she struggled with letting Charlotte out of her sight, even knowing the security was excellent. James listened thoughtfully, then shared something that helped Kate more than he realized. He explained that fear was a natural response. The trust in the people and systems designed to protect Charlotte was important. He assured her that after this incident, every member of the security team was more alert than ever. Charlotte was probably the most protected 7-year-old in the entire world. After the meeting, Kate felt somewhat better. Speaking with James had reminded her that the security team was not just doing a job, but genuinely cared about protecting her family. She decided to try trusting them more and working on managing her anxiety rather than letting it control her actions. For Charlotte's sake, she needed to project confidence and normalcy, even when she felt neither. Prince William implemented some personal security measures of his own. He purchased a sophisticated home security system for Adelaide Cottage, adding an extra layer of protection beyond the official security team. He also began varying the times and routes they used for Charlotte's school drop-offs and pickups, making patterns harder for anyone to predict. These changes made him feel more in control of his family's safety. The media eventually learned more details about the incident, though the most disturbing aspects remained private. A tabloid newspaper reported that the intruder had been carrying materials related to Princess Charlotte, but the palace refused to confirm or deny specific details. The story ran for several days, various publications speculating about what had happened and debating the adequacy of royal security. Kate and William discussed whether they should reduce Charlotte's public appearances. Some members of the royal household suggested keeping the young princess out of the spotlight until the situation had completely settled. However, Kate felt strongly that changing their approach would send the wrong message. They had always tried to raise their children with a balance between royal duty and normal childhood. Hiding Charlotte away would let fear win and would not actually make her safer in the long term. They compromised by being more selective about which events Charlotte would attend. Large outdoor public gatherings where security was harder to control would be avoided for a while. However, scheduled visits to schools, hospitals, and organized charity events would continue as planned. These environments could be carefully secured, and the positive impact of Charlotte's presence at such events was important to the family. The scheduled visit to the children's hospital went ahead 2 weeks after the incident. Security was heavier than usual, though the palace tried to keep the increased presence subtle. Kate watched Charlotte interact with sick children, reading them stories and laughing at their jokes. The young princess showed no fear or hesitation, treating the outing like any other day. Kate felt proud of her daughter's natural warmth and resilience. At home that evening, Charlotte talked excitedly about the children she had met at the hospital. She asked her mother if they could send some of her toys to the hospital for children who did not have many things. Kate's heart melted at her daughter's compassion. This was why they exposed Charlotte to public service despite the risks. They wanted to raise a caring, socially conscious person who understood her privilege and responsibility to help others. Inspector Morrison provided a final update to the family about David Fletcher. He had been formally committed to a secure psychiatric facility and was receiving treatment. The doctors reported that medication was beginning to help stabilize his condition. Though he still held delusional beliefs about the royal family, he had been placed on a watch list that would monitor him, even after any eventual release. If he ever approached royal property or showed signs of renewed obsession, he would be immediately detained. The inspector also shared some positive news. David's sister had expressed deep remorse for not being able to prevent her brother's actions. She wanted the royal family to know that she had tried everything she could think of to get him help. Kate felt compassion for the sister, recognizing that she was a victim of the situation in her own way. The princess asked if there was any way to send a message to the woman, letting her know that the family held no anger toward her. Through proper channels, a brief message was conveyed to David's sister. It stated that the royal family understood she had done her best to help her brother and bore no responsibility for his actions. They hoped he would receive the treatment he needed to recover. This small gesture of compassion meant everything to David's sister, who had been consumed with guilt about what her brother had done. A month after the incident, life at Adelaide Cottage had largely returned to normal, at least on the surface. Charlotte went to school, played with her siblings, and seemed completely unaffected by the dramatic events of that October morning. The enhanced security measures were now routine, invisible to the children, but vigilant nonetheless. Kate still experienced occasional anxiety, but it had decreased significantly with time and the continued support from Dr. Chen. James Harrison received his commendation in a small, private ceremony attended by Prince William and senior security staff. The prince personally pinned the medal to James's uniform and shook his hand firmly. William spoke briefly about how James represented the best of royal protection. Someone who remained alert even on quiet days and trusted his instincts when something seemed wrong. James accepted the honor with quiet dignity, still somewhat uncomfortable with being singled out. The autumn leaves had fallen completely from the trees at Adelaide Cottage by the time Kate felt ready to process what the incident had truly meant for their family. 6 weeks had passed since David Fletcher had been tackled on their lawn, and life had settled into a new rhythm. The enhanced security measures were now part of their daily routine, so familiar that even Charlotte barely noticed the extra guards or cameras that monitored their property. One afternoon, Kate sat in her study writing in a private journal she had kept for years. She reflected on how the incident had changed her perspective on many things. Before that frightening morning, she had sometimes felt frustrated by the constant security presence around her family. She had occasionally viewed the guards and protocols as intrusive, as barriers to the normal family life she wanted to give her children. Now she saw them differently, understanding they were necessary, protections that allowed her children to grow up safely, despite the unique challenges of their position. She wrote about the guilt she had felt immediately. After learning what David Fletcher had been carrying in his backpack, Kate had questioned every decision she and William had made about exposing their children to public life. Should they have been more private? Should they have restricted photographs of Charlotte more carefully? Dr. Chen had helped her work through these feelings, reminding Kate that reasonable parenting decisions could not prevent mentally ill individuals from developing obsessions. The problem was David Fletcher's illness, not anything the royal family had done. Kate also reflected on the conversation she'd had with Queen Camilla about the incident. The Queen had shared her own experiences with security threats over the years, some of which had been frightening at the time, but were now distant memories. Camilla had offered valuable perspective, reminding Kate that, while they could not eliminate all risks, they could trust in the excellent security systems and dedicated people protecting the family. Fear could not be allowed to steal the joy from daily life. Prince William had processed the incident in his own way. He had channeled his protective instincts into concrete action, working with security teams to improve protocols and training. He had also become more involved in mental health advocacy, seeing firsthand how untreated mental illness could lead to dangerous situations. William began supporting initiatives that worked to identify and help people experiencing mental health crises before they reached the point of committing crimes. One evening, William shared with Kate an idea he had been developing. He wanted to create a new royal foundation focused specifically on mental health intervention and early treatment programs. The goal would be to help families get support for loved ones showing signs of serious mental illness before situations escalated to dangerous levels. Kate loved the idea, recognizing that something positive could come from their frightening experience. Charlotte continued to thrive, blissfully unaware of the full extent of what had happened that October morning. She remembered the day the guards had played their special game and brought everyone inside quickly. But it had not become a source of fear or trauma for her. Kate credited Dr. Chen's advice about maintaining normalcy and the fact that Charlotte had not actually seen David Fletcher or the disturbing materials he had been carrying. The young princess had recently started a new hobby, learning to paint with watercolors. She loved creating pictures of flowers, animals, and her family. One afternoon, Charlotte proudly showed her mother a painting she had completed. It depicted Adelaide Cottage surrounded by a garden full of colorful flowers, with small figures representing the family playing outside. Standing around the edges of the property were several people in uniform, which Charlotte explained were the guards keeping everyone safe. Kate looked at the painting with mixed emotions. On one level, she felt sad that Charlotte's artwork included security guards as a natural part of her world. No 7-year-old should have to think about needing protection. On another level, Kate felt grateful that Charlotte saw the guards as friendly protectors rather than scary presences. The child's innocent perspective helped Kate appreciate the dedication of the security team in a new way. James Harrison had returned to his regular duties, though he noticed people still treated him with a bit more respect after the incident. His colleagues at the security office occasionally teased him good-naturedly about being the hero guard, but it was done with genuine affection. James appreciated that the attention had mostly faded, and he could focus on his work without constant recognition. One morning, James was conducting his routine perimeter check when he spotted a woman standing near the public footpath taking photographs. He approached carefully and politely asked what she was photographing. The woman explained she was a tourist from Australia who loved architecture and was taking pictures of the beautiful historic buildings in Windsor. James checked her camera and saw only innocent photos of buildings and landscapes. He thanked her and moved on. But the interaction reminded him to stay vigilant without becoming paranoid. The incident with David Fletcher had taught the security team important lessons about the spectrum of threat levels. Not every person taking photos or showing interest in royal properties was dangerous. Most were simply curious tourists or royal enthusiasts who meant no harm. The skill was in recognizing the subtle signs that distinguished normal interest from obsessive behavior. James had developed that skill over years of experience, and he was now helping train other guards to recognize similar warning signs. Inspector Morrison closed the official investigation into the incident with a comprehensive report that was shared with palace security and relevant government agencies. The report analyzed what had gone right and what could be improved in future situations. Overall, the response had been excellent. James Harrison's early detection, the rapid coordination between security team members, and the decisive action to protect the royal family members had prevented what could have been a much more serious situation. The report did recommend some improvements to the monitoring systems used to track individuals who might pose threats. David Fletcher had slipped through existing processes because his obsession had developed gradually, and he had been careful not to cross legal boundaries until the day he actually trespassed. The new recommendations included better sharing of information between local police, mental health services, and royal security when concerning patterns of behavior were identified. Kate and William were asked to review and approve the inspector's final report. As they read through the detailed account of David Fletcher's obsession with their daughter, they felt the disturbing nature of his fixation all over again. The report included excerpts from his manifesto, carefully selected to illustrate his delusional thinking without being gratuitously detailed. Reading his words, they could see how completely disconnected from reality he had become. The most chilling section of the report detailed David's plans for that October morning. He had intended to approach Princess Charlotte directly, believing she would recognize him as her protector and willingly go with him. His delusion was so complete that he genuinely thought Kate would understand and thank him for saving Charlotte from the imaginary conspiracy he believed was threatening her. The disconnect between his fantasy and reality was profound and deeply unsettling. William asked what would have happened if James had not tackled David when he did. Inspector Morrison explained that other guards would have intervened within seconds, but David might have gotten close enough to actually speak to Charlotte. The psychological impact of having a delusional stranger approach her while shouting about conspiracies could have been traumatic for the young princess. James's quick action had prevented not just physical danger, but potential psychological harm. Kate felt renewed gratitude for James Harrison's vigilance. She made a mental note to do something special for all the security personnel at Christmas. These people dedicated their lives to protecting her family, often working long hours in difficult conditions with no recognition. The incident had opened her eyes to just how important and challenging their job really was. As winter approached, the royal family prepared for the holiday season. Charlotte was excited about Christmas, making lists of gifts she wanted to give to family members and friends. She insisted on using her own pocket money to buy small presents for the guards who worked at Adelaide Cottage. Kate helped her shop for chocolate boxes and holiday cards, touched by her daughter's thoughtfulness toward the security team. On Christmas morning, Charlotte personally delivered her small gifts to each guard on duty. James Harrison received a box of chocolates and a hand-drawn Christmas card showing him in his uniform with a cape, labeled Superguard. He was genuinely moved by the gesture, carefully preserving the card in his locker at the security office. It was a reminder of why he did this job, why protecting this family mattered so much. The Christmas holiday was peaceful and joyful for the family. They attended church services, enjoyed traditional meals together, and Charlotte played happily with her new toys. For Kate, the normalcy of the holiday felt like a victory. They had faced a frightening situation, processed it, learned from it, and moved forward without letting fear control their lives. That resilience felt like an important lesson to model for her children. In the new year, Prince William launched his new mental health foundation with Kate's full support. The initiative received significant media attention and funding from various charitable organizations. William spoke publicly about the importance of early intervention for mental health crises. Though he carefully avoided mentioning the specific incident that had inspired this work, the goal was to help people, not to exploit their family's experience for publicity. David Fletcher remained in the psychiatric hospital, making slow progress with treatment. His doctors reported that medication had reduced his delusional thinking. Though he still struggled with accepting reality about his past beliefs and behaviors, he had begun to understand that his obsession with Princess Charlotte had been a symptom of his illness rather than something real or justified. This recognition was an important step in his treatment, though he had a long road ahead. Inspector Morrison checked in occasionally with the royal family to provide updates about David's condition and treatment. She also shared information about the broader impact their case had on improving systems for identifying and helping people with severe mental illness. Several regions in Britain had implemented new protocols based on lessons learned from analyzing how David's situation had developed and escalated. Kate received a letter from David Fletcher's sister several months after the incident. The woman wrote to thank Kate for the compassionate message that had been sent through official channels. She shared that her brother was receiving excellent care and was beginning to understand how sick he had been. She also mentioned that she had become an advocate for better mental health resources, working with local organizations to help other families navigate the challenging process of getting help for loved ones experiencing serious mental health issues. Kate was moved by the letter and asked if she could respond directly. After consultation with palace advisors and Inspector Morrison, a carefully worded personal note was sent. Kate expressed hope for David's continued recovery and appreciation for his sister's advocacy work. The exchange represented a healing moment for everyone involved, acknowledging the humanity in a situation that could easily have been viewed only through the lens of fear and anger. Charlotte's 8th birthday arrived in the spring, marking almost 6 months since the incident at Adelaide Cottage. The family celebrated with a small party attended by close friends and some of Charlotte's classmates from school. Security was present but unobtrusive, allowing the children to play and celebrate normally. Kate watched Charlotte blow out her birthday candles, making a wish with her eyes squeezed shut, and felt overwhelming love and gratitude that her daughter was safe, happy, and thriving. Later that evening, after the party guests had left and Charlotte was in bed, Kate and William sat together in their sitting room. They reflected on how much had happened in the past 6 months and how their family had grown stronger through the challenge. William mentioned that he no longer felt angry when he thought about David Fletcher. Instead, he felt a complicated mixture of relief that the situation had ended safely, sadness that mental illness could destroy someone's life so completely, and determination to work toward better systems for helping people before they reached such desperate states. Kate agreed with those sentiments. She admitted that she still occasionally felt anxious, especially when Charlotte was out of sight for extended periods. However, she had learned to recognize those moments of anxiety for what they were: natural protective instincts that needed to be acknowledged but not allowed to become controlling fears. She had worked hard with Dr. Chen to develop healthy coping strategies, and most days now she felt confident and secure about Charlotte's safety. James Harrison was promoted to a senior position within the Royal Security Team, partly in recognition of his exceptional performance during the incident. His new role involved training other guards and helping develop improved threat assessment protocols. He took the responsibility seriously, using his experience to help the next generation of security personnel understand the importance of trusting their instincts and acting decisively when situations demanded it. On the anniversary of the incident, Kate returned to the spot on the lawn where David Fletcher had been tackled. She stood there alone for a few minutes, reflecting on how that frightening morning had changed their lives in both obvious and subtle ways. The enhanced security, the increased vigilance, the deeper appreciation for the people who protected her family, her own growth in managing fear and anxiety had all emerged from that experience. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see William approaching. He put his arm around her shoulders, and they stood together, looking at the peaceful garden. In the distance, they could hear Charlotte laughing as she played with her siblings. The sound was pure and joyful, exactly how childhood should sound. That laugh represented their victory over fear, their commitment to giving their children the best possible life despite the unique challenges they faced. Kate realized that she had forgiven David Fletcher for what he had done, not because his actions were acceptable or justified, but because holding on to anger served no purpose. He was a sick man who had needed help he did not receive until it was almost too late. His illness had created a frightening situation. But that situation had also revealed the strength of the security systems protecting their family and the dedication of people like James Harrison, who took their protective duties so seriously. William mentioned that he had received a report that David was doing much better after a year of intensive treatment. While he would likely never be released from supervised care, his delusional thinking had decreased significantly with proper medication and therapy. He had expressed remorse for his actions, though understanding that remorse was complicated by the fact that he had genuinely believed he was helping Charlotte at the time. Kate asked if William thought they should share any part of their story publicly, perhaps to help reduce stigma around mental illness, or to highlight the importance of early intervention. William considered the question carefully. He felt that some aspects could be shared in a general way through his Mental Health Foundation's work, but the specific details about David's obsession with Charlotte should remain private to protect their daughter's dignity and privacy. As they walked back toward the cottage together, Kate felt at peace with how they had handled everything. They had protected Charlotte from trauma while taking the situation seriously. They had enhanced security without becoming prisoners to fear. They had processed their own emotional responses with professional help. And they had found ways to turn a frightening experience into positive action through Williams's mental health advocacy work. Charlotte appeared at the cottage door, calling to her parents that dinner was ready. She waved enthusiastically, her face full of the simple happiness of an 8-year-old looking forward to a meal with her family. Kate waved back, her heart full of love for this remarkable little girl who had no idea how close danger had come, or how her safety had been protected by quick-thinking guards and comprehensive security systems. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, the conversation was filled with normal topics. Charlotte talked about a school project she was working on. Her siblings shared stories from their day. William told a funny story about something that had happened during a royal engagement. Kate listened to her family's voices overlapping and laughing, and felt deeply grateful for the ordinary magic of this moment. Later, after the children were asleep, Kate added a final entry to her journal about the incident. She wrote that fear had visited their home that October morning in the form of a deeply troubled man carrying disturbing materials, but fear had not won. Love had won. Vigilance had won. Professional dedication had won. And their family's resilience and commitment to living fully, despite challenges, had won. The incident would always be part of their story, but it would not define their story.
Thanks for
She
watching.
closed the
Don't
journal
forget to
and
subscribe.
put it away in her desk drawer, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Because that was what royal life demanded, and what parenthood demanded, and what being human demanded. You faced challenges, you protected those you loved. You learned and grew from difficult experiences, and you kept moving forward with courage and hope. The royal guard had tackled an intruder on their lawn that frightening autumn morning. More importantly, their family had tackled fear itself and emerged stronger on the other side.